Mine is a layman's Kaddish, Lord. Modern, universal, ecumenical, and addressed to you, as well as your tormented children. Jews, Christians, Muslims, and all others, believers and non-believers, yearning for peace, freedom, and justice in a genocidal and fratricidal world. My journey has been a tale of two cultures. I was born into a Franco-American family, American parents, but born and raised in France. And I think this is the most important factor in my development, this double prism that has enabled me to look at the world through two cultures, through two languages, through two civilizations. My father was born in Poland, and he was one of the youngest survivors of Auschwitz, Dachau, Majdanek, and other infernos. He came out of the camps at age 16 with a kind of strange sense of optimism. I think for him, that was the ultimate form of survival. Surviving physically was one thing, but he decided that if he walked around depressed and broken, then Hitler had still won. But if he was able to create a new life, to learn to love and live again, to be able to dream, to be able to sing, to recite poetry, then he had really survived. And this is a very important thing because someone who had lived through so much believed that there is no such thing as hereditary enemies and that we must talk to one another and exchange with one another and trade with one another, even if ideologically we don't see eye to eye, but that the humanity in it is what's most important. The first phase of my career was in the world of politics and policy. I worked for President Clinton at the State Department and in the White House. And then something happened after my life took a sad turn. I lost my husband, and a year later, I lost my father. And this made something switch in me. I looked at the world differently, and I looked at my role in it differently. And I realized that I have something to say. And what became obvious was the way the world was changing. As the last survivors, the last witnesses disappear one by one, as those voices are no longer around, it is up to us, the children of the survivors, and as many of my contemporaries as possible, to take up this message, because we must remain vigilant. In 2017, I was asked to become the chair of something called the Aladdin Project, which has a funny name, but it's a name one remembers, and above all, it evokes light, which I think is a very powerful symbol. And the purpose of the Aladdin Project is to fight back against negation, against anti-Semitism, and against all forms of intolerance, with a special focus on the Muslim world. About 10 years ago, when the Iranian regime was really investing a lot of energy and money into denying the Holocaust, a special task force was set up to figure out how to respond to this. It just seems unconscionable that one would deny that the gas chambers existed. It's something I've never understood, but it's also something that we have to reckon with. And they discovered that the Diary of Anne Frank had never been translated properly into Arabic, into Farsi, and into Turkish. And so they decided to translate it. And this led to a series of books, Primo Levi and others, being translated and distributed in those languages throughout the Muslim world. And this has completely changed perception and understanding in a very simple and powerful way. Education and knowledge open the reader's eyes to the world. The more educated people can be about history, about literature, about so many things, the more equipped we all are to process information when it comes to us. The Aladdin Project has a number of programs, from the translation of the books to conferences to a wonderful summer university. And we bring together about 70 students from 40 different countries with some leading academic institutional partners to talk about issues of mutual concern, of social cohesion, and really create a sense of understanding and knowing the other so that we can better live together. One can talk about cultural differences even if they have a religious tinge to them in a secular way, because it's part of society, and this is not just about the practice of religion, it is about culture. As a Jew, I feel my Judaism, I would say personally, in a very cultural way more than I do in a religious way. And I think this is true of many people. The other thing that is happening, and it's something we have to not just take into account, but really work with, is the fabric of Europe is changing. There is a substantial part of the population that practices Islam, and that is part of what Europe is and is becoming, and that must continue to be a part of it, and we have to learn to develop this form of social cohesion, but in a way that embraces the differences. And when you see the rise of these rightist parties and of this intolerance and this refusal to accept this change and these evolutions, that is not only disturbing, it is scary and counterproductive. Because demographically, this is not going to change. This is just in the evolution of things. And I find that our societies are enriched by these differences. So the big challenge, and this is something Aladdin is working on increasingly, is how to develop this sense of what the French call vivre ensemble, living together in France, throughout Europe. I think we need to be working on it in the United States as well. And it need not have a religious dimension. It's really a cultural dimension. It's about language, it's about literature, it's about culinary traditions, it's about music. So many things that just make all of us richer and more evolved as human beings for being exposed to it. We are living through very tumultuous times, and it is up to all of us to play a role and to try to offset what is happening by fomenting greater understanding, greater cooperation, and greater openness. Culture has a tremendous role to play in social cohesion. And I believe that through culture and through education, we can achieve a society where there is at once cohesion and the ability to live together, but also a celebration of our differences. And those two components can be very greatly enriched through cultural dialogue and cultural understanding. So what I learned from my time in the Clinton administration, it was sort of a different era. It was before 9/11, and it was a time of great hope. The Cold War was over. The world had not taken the turn that it took after September 2001. And there was a sense that democracy was on the rise, freedom was on the rise, humanity was heading toward a better place. And then 9/11 happened and everything that followed. History does not move in a straight line, and progress does not occur in a straight line. But what I think we have learned, and I must delve into politics for a moment, is that especially when a country like the United States is open onto the world, when it listens to the world, when it talks to its allies, and when it talks to those with whom it does not see eye to eye, we all fare better. We're not faring well right now with the current policies and this America First business and this increasingly unilateralist, isolationist, belligerent tone. To steal an expression from Mr. Trump, what makes America great is what it stands for, the values upon which it was founded, of openness and of standing for what is right. As a policymaker, if I want to understand another country, another power, another head of state, I need some background. I need to understand what matters in that country, in its history, to its people. And I think that mistake has been made of not trying to understand the other. This is what humanity boils down to. And when we make policy and advise policymakers, what are we advising about, if not human relations? And therefore, this has to be part of the equation, of the dialogue, of the exchange. People-to-people exchange is extremely important. This is what creates, it's the loom, it's what creates the fabric of international relations in the literal sense. It's what Walter Russell Mead has called, he made a different distinction. He distinguishes among hard power, what he calls sticky power, and sweet power. So hard power is hard power. Sticky power is institutions, multilateral institutions, and once one becomes a part of them, one needs to adapt one's behavior. Trump has gone a bit off course with that, but when a country is party to international agreements, this in many ways influences its or constrains its leaders' behavior, which is a good thing. And sweet power is the power of attraction. What makes a country, a civilization compelling and attractive? And in the case of the United States, this has been one, what it stands for, and this culture that it has very deliberately projected through the world. Again, through cinema, through music, through painting, through theater and dance. The same goes for many other countries. France, of course, has had, it for centuries has relied on what is called le rayonnement culturel, on the power of the French language, on the influence of the French language and literature. And this is true of many other countries. Inherent to the soul and to the creative process of someone who is truly creative and artistic is bound to be influenced by the political climate. Look at how the Renaissance and the Enlightenment opened a new era. These things are very, very tied. And again, look at the creativity that even occurred in the concentration camps. That people were able to write poetry, to write music. I think that is because even in the most hideous of circumstances, or all the more so in the most hideous of circumstances, one needs beauty and creativity. It is necessary. It is a form of nourishment. And in order to maintain their humanity, these prisoners felt that they had to create. These are not happy circumstances, and I don't wish them on anyone. And I wish that all humans and all artists in the world could just create under free and pleasant circumstances. But I don't think the universe is quite there yet. Can you pardon my sins, Lord? Can I pardon yours? I can forgive, but I cannot forget. The wounds of my flesh and soul may have healed long ago, but wounds of the heart that bleed for loved ones never heal. Now, one of the last living survivors of those monstrous crimes, my life is no longer entirely my own. They also live within me.